We're ready to go. Hi guys, welcome. I'm Phil. Presentation today, I've iterated through various names and titles and slides, but I come down to stick with minimalist product perspectives and processes. So a quick introduction about me. I used to work in various ad tech companies as an engineer, doing various things like tracking users, working out what ads to show them, to building analytics platforms, and doing various bits of mobile stuff. But I kind of had enough of London and I wanted to work for myself, so I quit, started my own business, and now I build apps. Like I kind of do a mix of apps and client work. Predominantly today I'm going to be speaking from an app building perspective. So broadly today what we're talking about is delivering product quickly, MVPs, what they are, how do we define them, and if we have a bit of time at the end, productivity. So to quickly get started, why deliver quickly? So I personally think that delivering quickly is good because you can test if products are going to be viable in a market. How do you know that there's actually user demand? How do you know that the users will actually be interested? And it helps you to avoid investing in failures. Like if you adopted an old waterfall approach, spent 6 months building something and then sold nothing, you've just lost a load of money. For me as well, I like to deliver something tangible every month. It's kind of like, because I work by myself, it's a nice thing to see you've shipped something, it's out in the wild. And of course, learning from failures, and that's what it's all about really. So we must start by what is an MVP, and MVP is something I see either overinflated, done wrong quite commonly. So if we break it down into its actual definition, minimum means the least amount of quantity possible, or required. Viable, capable of working successfully, product, something that is manufactured or refined for sale. So let's kind of nail this myth. Minimum does not mean the easiest approach. Minimum, I think, is harder than creating something that's bloated and just designed to be pushed into market. I've got it wrong loads of times myself, and I've launched stuff that's failed, mainly because I missed the viability stage or the actual product stage. I shipped things that were technically, I thought were the best solutions as an engineer, but they weren't product ready for users, you know? So it's key to define your MVP. Before you set about building it, you want tight constraints and you want to be committed to building what you've defined. So how do we define an MVP? I'm going to use a basic framework with an example of an app that I built earlier in the year. Quick bit of background, we built a web app to start with to help. 3 of us developers were mates and we listened to a lot of music while crunching out code. We wanted to listen to DJ mixes for genres, so we just built this web app, launched it on Product Hunt, and had demand for an iOS app. So we wanted to build an iOS app really quickly and churned it out in about 3 weeks from idea to product to app store. So we define the MVP using a kind of a top level goal. So the user can listen to mixes on their iPhone, which is broadly what we want the app to do, with the main process being them able to select a genre and to play music in the player. So that's essentially our core functionality. Now, with any app, there's so many other things you can build into it, and you do need other features, but how do you decide what features go into your app? So I like to do something called feature ranking. I'm not sure if this is like a legitimate thing that people actually use, but it's something that I do. So I take my user stories and I use various metrics to quantify their relative value in terms of engineering. Should I build it or should I not? So for example, as a user, I want to share tracks. Engineering wise, it's very easy to build. Like that's got a 9, like 10 is easiest and 9 is like super easy. Value to use it in the app is probably very high because they want to share tracks with their friends, and if they share it with their friends, then more people use the app. So it has a great advantage to us as a business. Whereas if a user requested being able to change the EQ, so like e.g. more bass or more highs, engineering wise it's pretty tough, I think. And then value to user, if only one user out of 100 uses it, then it's not going to add much value in the app. So what I would say to do is set a threshold for your score and don't build anything under that. Commit to building the features that score above that and deliver them. But this kind of framework can be extended beyond what I've just put here. So for example, something that I really liked was Uber's Kitten on Demand service. I don't know if anyone saw it. Basically, you could use Uber to get kittens for an hour. I think it was based in Australia. Get them delivered to you. While that would score very lowly on a board like this, if we added another column for like marketing or novelty value, I think it'd be 10. I think it'd score very highly. So it's just about working out what you want to add value in and where you want it to add value. One of my favorite sayings is, if everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. So one of my friends sent me this conversation he had with a coworker, I think last week, which is fairly typical of things you see in big organizations. People getting bugged for things that they think adds value. Now this happens a lot, and it's just a typical pressure. Working by yourself, you don't have this sort of issue, but if you're working in a big company and you don't plan what you're going to deliver well, then it often leads to scope creep. Now, scope creep refers to uncontrolled changes or continuous growth in a project scope. Someone's like, oh, can you just add this little feature in? Can you add this in? Then you end up delivering something that wasn't the MVP, and that's often delayed, or maybe it's not even fit for market. So you need to basically work out if it adds value, and you shouldn't really deviate from what you've promised to deliver anyway. So another really important thing to me is that doing something unimportant does not make it important, even if people push it on you. And a task that requires a lot of time does not make it important. What you do is infinitely more important than how you do it. So to me, because I'm one engineer working in my company, maybe I have other people sometimes, but a lot of the time by myself, I will get something out within the time frame that I've committed to, even if it's not the most beautiful solution. As an engineer, it's a common thing to have the battle between writing an elegant solution or writing one that allows you to test the solution and market. If people like the feature, I can go back, I can make it elegant later, because we know it adds value. I'm not going to lose time by writing that feature. So in terms of features, I like to consider Pareto's law, which broadly relates to spending 80% of your time on 20% of the features, because 20% of the features deliver 80% of the value. So if we consider Facebook as an example, I spend most of my time in a news feed or on Messenger. I don't spend much time looking through apart from iOS, Saigon, Ads Manager, Events, Dev Center. How much time do I spend there compared to the rest of the app? If I was Facebook, I would spend my time working on the news feed and working on Messenger, which they do. But they have like unlimited resources, so it's probably not a great example. But if they had limited resources, then they should prioritize. So for me, delivering quickly is awesome because of something called the feedback loop. So this is typical of pretty much any product process and other philosophies like Kaizen, the Japanese philosophy for continuous improvement. So looking at feedback loop, we probably all pretty familiar with it one way or another. Like planning, you learn a little, dev and QA, you learn a little, but all your key learnings come from releasing. So really, release time is what you need to focus on, and the more that you can release, the more feedback you get and the more that you can craft your product. So how can we minimize the time to release? How can we minimize the time to feedback? Using agile methodologies, incremental iterative work cadences. We're doing 2-week sprints, committing to deliver every 2 weeks. You see apps in the App Store do this, like Facebook, the main app, Messenger, like Instagram, they release every 2 weeks, spot on. Automate as much as possible. This goes without saying, like I'm an engineer because I kind of got bored of doing manual stuff and I just decided to automate stuff. Like that's why I do what I do, I think. If you have to do it more than a couple of times, it makes sense to write some code. Doesn't matter how hacky, and just automate what you don't need to do. And for me, I find automated UI testing, this is specifically iOS related. Xcode 7.3, you can automate UI tests so quickly. You could literally do a whole test set for an app in under an hour if you just use the record feature, no assertions. Even though you don't have assertions, it means that you can check that your app will not crash. Maybe you've forgotten to disconnect an outlet somewhere, which is like so common if you're using Storyboard. You can just run the quick UI test before like releasing or pushing a build, and you know that it's not going to crash from user interactions. So quick summary, you basically need to define your MVP. You need to commit to building it, and you need to iterate to deliver value. So I broke the presentation into kind of two sections based on time. And this next section, I suppose, is about how I make the most out of my time as an indie developer. I don't want to be working all the time. I want to get stuff done quick and I want to release. So I don't know where I watch a lot of survival programs, and this is one of the key sayings that you see in like Survivor Man is keep it simple, stupid. Do I really need to use a framework? Do I really need React to build a front end for a web app that actually could just be written in HTML because it never changes the content? Do I really need to use CocoaPod for one feature out of that huge library or thing I'm bringing into my project? So I really think minimizing what you bring into your project and using, even if they're old and tested solutions, are sometimes better than sticking with something that's alpha but like super cool. And these are kind of personal productivity tips now, but I think ignoring the noise. So for me, moving 6 hours ahead of my country, where my friends are, where some of my clients are, means that I don't get contacted by them. It's cool. I don't even have to turn Facebook Messenger off because no one will message me. And if they do, I ignore all my emails and just check them once a day, which I think is one of the best productivity hacks. Like emails suck time away from you. You see bloated messages, and you just end up waiting for emails. It's not good. Slack's much better. And telling people you don't have time for them is also good. And then something I like to call microsprinting. So I use either Trello, Kanban boards, and I have tickets on them. When I decide to work on a ticket, I work only on that ticket and focus on it like tunnel vision, so I get it done. Whether it's from 15 minutes it takes to do or 3 hours. If the ticket has kind of subtasks, don't expand your scope, break it into subtasks, then focus on each subtask in a distinct period of time. There's no point in just sitting. I personally believe I can't work 9 till 5. I have to do bits of a few hours of work here, maybe go and have a nap or something, then do more hours of work and spread it and find out when you're most productive. And I suppose my last kind of piece of productivity advice, especially for someone who works by themselves, is get a good network of people you can ping your ideas to. I have friends that do DevOps, UI, design, UX, marketing. I have proofreaders and I send them what I'm doing. I just get feedback as I work, and creating a kind of network where you can send your ideas and they send you your idea, their ideas on what they're working on really helps especially when you work by yourself. It really helps you to get the best work out, I think. I don't know the best solution. There's so many solutions, especially in engineering, that you can take. Who knows what the best one is? I think I might know, but then my friend might send me a better solution. So kind of one last thing, I launched today a job site dedicated to Swift jobs. Hopefully it's cool, and if anyone's looking to hire someone Swift programmers, feel free to get in touch. It's totally free for anyone to post. So that's basically it. Any questions or comments?
What's the feedback for Mixmatic? Have you released? You've released already?
It's good. iOS is released. So we initially put the web app on Product Hunt, and it went really well. It hit the front page of Product Hunt, which is pretty cool. The iOS app, yeah, it's doing well. Feedback's good. Recently released a new version. So the first version we released was like so MVP. Like you couldn't actually listen to tracks while searching through. So gradually iterated on that and added in features the users requested. But I think getting the MVP out there is always the first stage. I didn't want to build something too complicated at first, because what if people are like, I don't even want it, or it doesn't fit in the market?
Yeah.
We had no idea it probably would fit in the market, but
how polished was it UI-wise?
It was polished UI-wise. So what I've learned from building apps and failing is that the UI is probably one of the most important bits for a user. Previously I've launched web apps that were technically superior to what else was on the market, but they weren't as polished UI-wise, and the feedback, people were like, oh, it doesn't look pretty, it's like not ideal, but they won't use it. UI is like the top of the triangle, I think.
I think it's something about trust. When you see something that's kind of janky, you're like, I don't even want to use it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like users are users, if you make the exact same app and then like make it look super pretty and then just make it plain, like developers will probably go for the plain one, but any normal people will go for the super pretty version because that's sort of the way it is, you know? So yeah, UI is so important, is key really to any product. That's the important part. Yeah, does anyone else have any UI, not UI, productivity tips or hacks that they use?
I just want to say I'm working in a digital agency, and I definitely understand when you speak about MVP and like, because we are just doing services, you know, and you are like mixing humans with humans, and sometimes your customers, they don't know about your job, so they are just like asking more and more and more, and if you don't like say we have to focus on this, or if you don't like give them some methodology,
Yeah.
you know, you cannot do the job. Even now you are alone, but it's getting harder and harder when you are working in a team.
Yeah.
Like when you have like 17 guys and you have like a UX designer and a developer and designer which don't understand technical part, and so. But it's really interesting.
I agree. I think in like this relieves the importance of ranking features according to metrics that you can measure. When you can measure the relative value of the features, then it really helps you define what you need to build.
Yeah, actually, you need to say this to your customer. Even you can put also the price, you know, because sometimes they pay, like they invest money on some things they really want,
Yeah.
but it's useless for users. You know what I mean? So you help the project to move on, you know,
Indeed.
in a good way.
Indeed. Does anyone else have any questions?
So how often do you value your users' feedback? So for example, you release on Monday, so how often do you check the user feedback? Every day?
It depends how often I get the feedback to start with. Usually it's at really sporadic times. So it's whenever they send it to me, basically I'll look at it. And whether I take the feedback on board, so I've had users request really kind of specific features that only they would get value from. And while I think, oh, this is awesome that the user's requesting this really kind of bespoke feature, but then I think, wait, how much time do I have? Does it add value to everyone else? So I have to, once again, I have to rate the feature in terms of its value as to whether I build it or not. Yeah.
So you said that UI testing is really important. How about unit testing?
Unit testing is very important as well, but if you work by yourself and you only have one developer, and you want to release something in like 2 weeks, then UI tests are very quick. Unit tests take a long time to build. So I typically, if I have a really complex algorithm in my app, I'll unit test that, and I'll unit test the key parts that are likely to go wrong. But if I'm just like UI test, quick and dirty coverall, checks it works or not. Unit testing, when your app becomes more once it's been released a while and you start iterating a bit more, I think that's where it becomes
And
important.
how do you QA your own product?
So I QA my own product, one by UI testing, two by test flight or sending people betas. I have like a group of people that I use for the betas. I reach out to the community for the specific app and create a little bit of a following, and I get them to test it for me. And like, you'd be surprised, you can just ask, and most people are happy to test it for you. Like, it's not normally any issues, but for iOS, test flight is awesome, and that's what I recommend doing. Any other questions?
Do you want code quality like present?
Sorry?
Code quality? Say for example you're working in a team, one of the other things that becomes important.
Yeah.
Readability, like is code readable?
So I will always prioritize readable code is important, yes, but it depends on the extent. If you worry about every little line spacing, if you worry about tidying everything up, I think that comes a little bit after you've got the MVP out. MVP is never perfect. When you start scaling it and when you start iterating, code quality is so important. Following basic principles of code quality, general OOP standards, like, that just goes without saying, but yeah.
So say you have a release ready and you know that it adds a lot of value, but it's not readable code, so you wait for a day or two, say, refactor it, you know that refactoring say takes a day or two, or do you just launch it and then refactor it
It really depends on the feature, and it depends how bad the code is. If the code is like awful, then it shouldn't be written in the. You shouldn't be writing like unreadable code. Like by setting out to write readable code is the key. Everyone has times when they hack stuff together that's just like. It really depends on the feature. I don't like releasing stuff that's unreadable ever, but if it's an urgent release, then maybe. But code quality is something to focus on from the outset, I think. Cool. I think there's drink and pizza, so I think that's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you okay? Thank you.